Today we're walking through the magical grounds, the beautiful interiors, and the long history of the Château of Vazay-le-Rideau in the Loire Valley. If you're planning a trip to the Loire, you should definitely add this small but stunning chateau to your list. It was built in the early 1500s by one Gilles Berthelot, the finance minister of François Ier, and it is still considered to be one of the best examples of early French Renaissance architecture, although of course over the centuries it has been added to and changed, with what we see today having been finished in the 1800s, which is also when they finished the beautifully landscaped park, and it is amazing to walk around this. We actually did that first when we got here. We walked around and viewed the whole place from the outside, which is possibly the most magical because it sits on an island within the forks of the Indre River flowing around it, and it appears to be floating on the water. It is absolutely gorgeous. As with most chateaus you'll find in France and in the Loire Valley, this is not the original castle. There was an earlier fortress built here during the 1100s by a knight in service to King Philippe II of France at the time. It was built to protect the road between Tours and nearby Chinon at the river crossing here. In 1418, the future Charles VII passed through here when fleeing from Paris. Finding that original fortress full of enemy Burgundian troops, he ordered it stormed. All 350 Burgundian soldiers here that were holding the fortress were executed, and the castle itself was burned down. The destruction was so total that the town was actually called Azay-le-Brûlé, which means Azay the Burnt, for quite a while, until as recently as the 1700s, so it must have been fairly a lot of destruction. The chateau remained a ruin until 1518, when François I's finance minister bought the land and built himself a residence reflecting his status as finance minister and mayor of nearby Tours. This particular chateau does feel a little bit like a homey castle, if a castle can be homey, probably because it's not enormous, and it's just gorgeous to walk through. It does feel like a place you could imagine spending a weekend if you were a finance minister in 1518. His duties kept him away a lot, and so the supervision of the construction of Vazay-le-Rideau fell to his wife Philippa. It took some time, as in order to set the castle on the marshy ground of an island, it had to be set on raised stilts driven into the mud. Much of the stone for the chateau came from 62 miles away, meaning it had to be transported here by boat, so construction obviously would have been necessarily very slow. By 1527, in fact, it was still unfinished, when the owner, Gilles Berthelot's cousin, who was the chief minister in charge of royal finances, was executed for financial shenanigans, and Berthelot himself went into exile, possibly due to being afraid of his own version of the same punishment. He never did return and died 2 years later in Cambrai, and despite his wife's pleas to François, the king confiscated the unfinished chateau and gave it to one of his knights, who did not finish the original quadrilateral shape that had been planned, which resulted in what we see today as an odd L shape that still remains. June 27th of 1619, Louis XIII spent the night here on his way from Paris to visit his mother Marie de Medici in Blois, and later in the 1600s his son Louis XIV would also stay here in the same room. The chateau passed down through this knight's family through the years until they sold it for 300,000 livres in 1787 to a family called Biencourt. The chateau at the time was in fairly poor condition, but the Biencourt family finished the construction using the Swiss architect who was also working on nearby Château Ussé, which we also visited, and you should absolutely go and see it. It is gorgeous. You can see that in our playlist when it is finished. Jumping ahead in history, during the Franco-Prussian War, the chateau was the headquarters for the Prussian troops. And there is a story that one night a chandelier actually fell from the ceiling onto the table where their leader was eating. He suspected an assassination attempt and ordered the chateau to be burned, but his officers actually saved the castle by persuading him that it had been an accident. The Biencourt family regained the chateau after the war, but as with many family stories of chateaus down through the ages, financial troubles had set in by 1899, and the young owner at that time was forced to sell it, along with its furnishings and 540 hectares of land, to an investor from Tours who wanted to sell its contents. So even then, people were flipping homes and selling furnishings. As a result, the chateau was emptied. In 1905, it was purchased by the state for 250,000 francs and listed as a historical monument and then a UNESCO World Heritage Site. During World War II, Azay-le-Rideau served as headquarters for the Ministry of Education when they fled Paris ahead of the Germans. If you're coming to visit, definitely go ahead and walk around the grounds first to just get a view of this amazing place from the outside, but there are some amazing things to see inside as well. You can climb up and tour the inside of the 500-year-old oak framework that is holding up the slate roof. This underwent a major restoration in the 2000s, but most pieces are original. They were extensively restored and reinforced, with a small portion of damaged wood being replaced. All work was done using traditional methods. The original roof that was constructed was built by Berthelot. Francois Premier allowed him to harvest oak from the forest around nearby Chinon for this. Those trees were harvested in the winter of 1517 and 18 with special permission from the king. The cutting and assembly of this amazing structure from those 16th century carpenters is considered to be exceptional even to this day. The construction still supports 75 tons of slate for the roof, which unfortunately is not original. It was removed and completely replaced by 75 tons of new Spanish slate during the restoration project here between 2015 and 17. As a nod to the skill of those carpenters from the 16th century, the skill of those craftsmen was listed on a UNESCO list of humanity's intangible heritage in 2009. I love that they have kept as much of this original as possible. The second floor, the chateau, retains its original floor plan and layout despite years of changes to the chateau as a whole. And you should not miss the Renaissance bedroom here. It was reconstructed to reflect a woman's bedroom of the time. So this would be like our imagination of a copy of Philippa's bedroom from the 1500s, and it is beautifully done. This room has wall coverings of braided rush mats, which were used for insulation on floors as well as walls at the time. And in the medieval time, the scent of rushes was also thought to purify the air and drive away bad humors. So we could probably all use that. We could probably all use some rush mats. The beds at the time were believed to have been elevated to keep them up off the cold floor, and the bed here actually is not original. It dates back to the 1800s, where it was made as a copy of Renaissance style. The upholstery of the bed, though, was actually made based on comparison paintings from the 1500s, and you can see the amazing damask, velvet, and beautiful embroidery here. You can also actually watch videos on the website for the chateau. I will link in the description. You can go there. They're worth a watch. They're not long, but there's some really cool videos to watch about the restoration project of the roof and the restoration of the Renaissance bedroom. While you're here, don't forget to make a note of the great staircase here, which is the oldest surviving example of this kind of staircase in France. And you will see King Francois I's salamander emblem on the staircase. You'll also see it here and there throughout the chateau, which I found really cool to just kind of keep your eyes peeled for that salamander. And I like to think that it was a nod because Francois Premier would have been the benefactor of the original builder of this, having given the original Berthelot permission to cut down some of the forest to build it in the 1517 and 18 winter. So of course it would have been appropriate to add the salamander emblem anywhere you could as a nod to the benefactor of the castle. So those are fun to look for throughout the walk. So as you can see with the rest of the chateau, many places you visit, the rooms are not decorated. This one is beautifully done, and the route that it will take you through on your visit, if you follow the signs, and kind of navigates you through their rooms that they want you to go through. You're not going to see all the rooms, obviously, but the rooms that are ready to be visited are beautifully decorated and done up in sort of period furnishings, and you really get a sense of this feels like a beautiful mansion. Like I mentioned earlier, it just feels like you're walking through a gorgeous giant home. So take your time and enjoy this beautiful chateau with us. We're going to finish walking through all of these lovely rooms with you, and then we're going to dig in a little bit to some of the practical details of visiting this jewel of the Loire Valley, as well as navigating how walkable it is and even how many miles we walked on this particular day. You also get a chance to visit the kitchen, and if you go to the little railing here in a couple of places in the kitchen and look down, you can actually see part of the original floor. They have left it where you can still see it, although the floor we're standing on is not original. Azay-le-Rideau is also easy to find if you're driving to it. There is parking really close to the chateau, although we parked a little ways further out. I felt like we were more like out in the village. And I think if you look back at the beginning of the video, there is what looked like a little cafe as you enter. We did not eat here, but it looked like there was one. It probably wasn't open when we came in because we stopped in here kind of in the first half of the day. I hope this inspires you to visit this beautiful gem in the Loire Valley if you are in the area. It is about 25 minutes, I believe, from where we were staying in Tours, and we actually visited here in the morning. It was in April, and it was very, very quiet. I had pretty much a lot of time and space to get a lot of footage throughout the chateau, so that was really cool. Not so crowded as some of the heavier touristed ones, and obviously April would be a great month to go. The wisteria is all in bloom. It was amazing. And we actually continued on from here. We stopped here in the morning, spent the better part of the morning, and then we grabbed a lunch, and then we went 12 minutes further from here onto Langeais and spent the afternoon walking around Langeais. Total miles walked for this day was only like 1.77, so this is not a heavy walking day, even with the two chateaus. Super easy day. If you're not into a lot of stairs, this one's pretty good. It didn't seem to have a ton of stairs like some of the ones we visited, so it's a great place to just get out and stretch your legs, walk around the grounds, see the magical sight from across the water, and then walk through the beautifully furnished rooms. If you've visited or if you've been to any of the nearby chateaus, let us know in the comments. We always love to hear about anything else that you've seen out there. Love to hear about the history of anything else in the area. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.